That night, the heavens brooded above the city of Abezi, swollen with clouds heavy enough to drown the stars. It was as if the sky wept silently for the broken souls that walked beneath it. Obasi, his limbs weary and his shirt sticking to his back, dragged his exhausted frame through the cracked alleys toward his home after a long day at the vehicle washing yard. His skin stung from the mix of soap, sweat, and rejection that had settled into his pores like dust. Each wrinkle on his fingers told of hours scrubbing mud-caked tires and scuffed doors, only to be repaid with curses instead of coins. He opened the thin metal door to his one-room shelter, barely more than a cement box with a rusted bolt and torn curtain, and collapsed onto the mat laid flat on the floor, a faded foam mattress barely cushioning his aching bones. "Chinnik," he muttered, eyes fixed on the moldy ceiling that sagged like it carried his burdens too. His ribs ached from hunger. All he had eaten that day was a handful of soaked gari and a few bitter groundnuts at dawn, just enough to silence the growls in his belly while he worked under the sun. Every naira he earned was sacred, saved not for himself, but for his mother's failing health. With trembling fingers, he reached for a cracked plastic cup and poured the last of the gari inside, his thoughts drifting like smoke. The memory of that woman in the black Prado haunted him again. She had screeched at him like he was filth. "Is this how you clean? Are you blind or lazy?" She barked, jabbing her ringed finger at a smear on the glass. He had already cleaned the car twice. Still, he bowed his head and cleaned it again, swallowing his pride like bile. That wasn't even the worst. No, the worst was the day everything almost fell apart, the day a wealthy customer accused him of stealing a file from her glove box. "You took it. Where is it?" she screamed, drawing a crowd. "No, madam, I didn't," he cried. But the guards didn't wait for proof. They dragged him, slapped and kicked him, shouted questions without listening. "Where's the file?" "You thief?" He was bleeding from the mouth, curled on the dusty ground, sobbing, until the woman blinked suddenly and said, "Ah, I think I left it at home." That was it. No apology, no justice, just silence. Now, alone in his room, the weight of those moments pressed against his chest, he wiped his face, surprised to find it wet. He hadn't realized he was crying. A sharp beep from his old Nokia. Phone cut through the silence like a blade. He answered, voice trembling. "Hello?" "Obasi, it's me." Came the voice of his younger sister, Dolly. Her voice was hoarse, soaked with hours of crying. "What is it?" he asked, straightening. "Mama, she's worse. She hasn't eaten. She can't even sit up anymore." "Obasi, I'm scared." His chest clenched. "She hasn't eaten anything?" "No. She just lies there, coughing. Her breathing. It's not normal." "I don't know what to do." Obasi bit his lip. His body was empty, but his mind burned. "Don't cry, Ndali. I'll come tomorrow morning," he promised, even though he had no idea how he'd pay for transport, let alone hospital care. When the call ended, he sat in silence. The room seemed smaller, the air thicker. An empty peak milk tin mocked him from a corner. His only towel clung to a nail like it had given up too. A worn Bible sat on the floor, its cover faded. Tears came again, heavier this time. He didn't stop them. He thought of his mother, Mama Ebel, the woman who used to rise before dawn to fry a kara by the roadside, just so her children could eat and go to school. He remembered her soft whispers, "One day, you go better, my son." But it hadn't gotten better. Not yet. Not for him. Not for her. Every day, he worked hungry. And now the woman who gave up everything for him, her body, her time, her youth, was dying over something as small as money. Real tears flowed, and his chest felt like it was being crushed by invisible hands. He couldn't breathe properly. He rocked back and forth, muttering, "I can't let Mama die like this. I can't." His mind raced. He saw her again, bent over smoky firewood. sweat glistening on her forehead as she cooked for people who would never know her pain. He saw his father too, the man who had walked out one rainy morning when Abasi was only 8, never to return. Left Mama with 2 children and debts like shadows. And now, the only one who stayed, she was slipping away. He reached for his phone again, planning to call his boss, maybe beg for an advance or help. But the screen blinked. No airtime. Chukwu. He cursed softly. He crawled to the corner and opened his small metal safe box. Not a real safe, just an old biscuit tin with tape on the lid. Inside was a bundle of wrinkled Naira notes, gathered from months of starving, of walking instead of taking bikes, of saying no when he wanted yes. He counted them. Not even enough for the journey home, and definitely not enough for medicine. There was no room left for wishes or delay. "Shinik, help me," Obasi whispered under his breath as he stood. "Up." By the time the first faint strands of morning light crept through the cracked wooden window, he had stuffed a few shirts into a black nylon bag. There was no food to pack, no thoughts to spare, just movement. He caught the earliest bus heading east toward his village. As the bus rumbled past dusty roads and swaying palm trees, Obasi sat stiffly, his forehead leaning against the window, watching the world blur. Goats bleated in the distance. Women sold fruits by the roadside. Children laughed somewhere nearby. But Obasi heard none of it. Every mile brought only one thing to his heart. "Please, Mama. Hold on." After nearly 8 hours of the long, jolting journey, the bus creaked to a stop near the edge of Agud, his village. Before the tires finished rolling, Obasi jumped down and ran. His legs moved faster than his thoughts. But then, ahead of him, he saw a small crowd clustered near the entrance to their compound. His breath caught. His chest tightened. "No. No," he muttered as he sprinted forward, stumbling over tree roots and stones. At the gate, his Aunt Mama Nikki stood, her wrapper hanging loosely, her eyes swollen and red. "Obasi," she whispered, placing a trembling hand on his chest. "Where is she?" he asked, voice cracking. Mama Nikki said nothing. Instead, she stepped aside. And there, on a mat in the center of the courtyard, lay his mother's still form, wrapped in white cloth. Just like that, gone, Obasi fell to his knees. The world grew silent. His own scream escaped his lips, but he didn't even hear it. "No, Mama, please, wake up, I'm here now." "I came," he cried, crawling to the mat and gripping its edges like they might pull her back. Dolly came running, her face swollen and drenched in grief. She collapsed into his arms, wailing with all the pain a child could carry. "She waited, Obasi. She waited for you all night," she sobbed. Then, this morning, she just stopped breathing. Obasi held his sister close, rocking her gently as his own soul broke into shards inside his chest. He wanted to be strong for her, but inside he was in pieces. Their anchor was gone. The one who bore all storms so they could stay afloat. The burial was simple, quiet, ache-filled. No ornate coffin, no marble stone. Just neighbors, a handful of relatives, and 2 shattered children burying the woman who was their whole world. After they laid her to rest, Obasi sat behind the house alone, staring into the cluster of thick trees at the compound's edge. His eyes were dry, but his chest burned. Why does life always pick the poor to punish, he thought. Why isn't love enough? But the wind gave no answer, and the birds stayed silent. The next morning, with swollen eyes and stiff limbs, he picked up his bag again. He didn't want to leave Ndali behind, but he had no choice. Hunger doesn't wait for morning. Grief doesn't pay bills. Life doesn't care how broken you are. So Obasi returned, to the same yard, the same broken concrete, the same hard water and insults. But he was no longer the same boy who left. Something had been ripped from him. It was a scorching Thursday afternoon. Obasi stood at the car wash, scrubbing soap off an old, dusty Corolla. His slippers were soaked, His faded shirt clung to his back like a second skin. His belly screamed for food, but he pushed through the pain. Then a sleek black Mercedes-Benz Geo rolled into the lot like royalty. The engine growled with authority, the polished paint glinting like a mirror. Everyone paused. Cars like this didn't come often. When the door opened, Obasi's heart skipped. "Jude," he muttered. The man who stepped out was unmistakable. Jude, his former classmate. Years ago, Jude had been the terror of their school. Always in fights, always skipping classes, smooth-talking his way through trouble. He had bribed smart kids to do his homework, flirted with every girl, and never seemed serious about anything. Obasi, by contrast, was the quiet genius, always top of the class, polite, focused, respectful. But now, here they stood, years later, Jude in gold chains and designer sneakers, stepping from a luxury ride. Obasi still fighting for coins and respect with water and soap. "Obasi the brain," Jude called out, grinning wide. "Jude the storm," Obasi replied, laughing despite himself as they embraced. "Guy, what'd happen nah? You day wash car here?" Jude asked, glancing around. Obasi looked away, suddenly ashamed. "Long story, bro." Life turned sideways. They sat under the shed beside the washing bay, and Obasi poured out his story. The slow unraveling of everything, Mama Ebel's death, the poverty, the humiliation. How he lived in a box of a room. How classmates he once helped now mocked him. How some of the richest customers, especially the women, treated him like dirt. Jude listened quietly, his smile fading. "You mean say, after all that brain, nah here you still day suffer?" he asked, his head shaking. "This life nah real scam." When Obasi finally finished rinsing the Benz, Jude reached into his pocket and pulled out a fat bundle of notes. "Take this. 50,000. Go clean yourself up, buy food, and later, come meet me." Later that evening, a message buzzed on Obasi's phone. "Guy, I day Royal Crest Hotel, Suite 404. No dull yourself." Obasi stared at the cash Jude had given him, still in disbelief. It was more than he had managed to save in 3 whole months. For the first time in a long time, a faint flicker of hope kindled inside him. As twilight stretched across the sky, Obasi washed himself thoroughly, scrubbing the sadness from his skin. He wore his best shirt, the one with a missing button, and headed toward the hotel. The moment he stepped inside, the world shifted. Smooth marble floors shone like glass, cool perfumed air swirled in the lobby, and golden lights danced from high chandeliers. He hesitated at the entrance, feeling out of place, ready to turn back. But then, up on the rooftop lounge, he spotted Jude waving, already seated with a confident grin. "You made it." "Sit, my guy," Jude said, slapping the seat beside him. Obasi sat, heart racing. Jude tossed a leather menu his way. "Order anything. This place get levels." Obasi opened the menu and nearly dropped it. 5,000 for water? He didn't even spend that in a whole week. But Jude laughed and waved it off. "Forget that. Get jollof, get chicken. Chop like king." Soon food arrived, steaming and rich, followed by chilled drinks. Obasi ate, but his mind churned. After they finished, Jude leaned in. "Bro, make I no lie give you. I day run dating format, full time. I use charm, social media, foreign women. Sugar mummies, white babes you name aim. Nah so the money day flow." Obasi blinked, not surprised but still shaken hearing it so plainly. Jude leaned closer. "I fit carry you enter. Make you comb it from this sufferhead. You day fine, you sabi. Talk, you no belong under Sunday wash car." Obasi stirred his drink, silent, heart pounding. Then he whispered, "I no fit do this kind thing." Jude's eyes narrowed. "You day craze? You still day talk morals? Your mama die because say money no day. Your sister day suffer for village. You day form righteous? His voice rose. Look yourself. You still day wear shirt weight tier since 2018. You one die in poverty? The words hit like punches. Obasi leaned back, overwhelmed. His mind reeled. He saw his mother again, bent over firewood before dawn, frying a kara through smoke. He saw their leaking roof, the patched uniforms, the shame. He remembered being mocked. Mr. Poverty, they used to call him. He remembered Simi, the girl he had once loved from afar, sneering at him. Abig, I know date broke boys. Obasi had believed in hard work, in doing right, but now, did any of it matter? He looked up slowly. I'll follow you, he said. Voice dry, I'm ready. Jude grinned and slapped his back. Good choice. That night, Jude took him home, not a palace, but everything inside gleamed with wealth. Speakers, gadgets, perfume that filled the air like cologne spilled. From the sky. Jude opened a laptop, tapped keys like a man conducting an orchestra. Sit, he said. Make I show you how money day truly made. He showed Obasi how to build fake identities, steal photos, create illusions. How to charm lonely people. Across oceans. How to play victim, widower, soldier, millionaire, all with a few perfect lines. You no need sweat under sun, Jude said, typing fast. Just small sharp brain. And small wickedness. Obasi listened, soaking it all in. You go build house for city, drive big car. Simi go cry for regret. The mention of her name lit a strange fire in him. Obasi clenched his fists. Maybe this was the path. From that night, he gave it everything. He barely slept. Day blurred into night. He crafted perfect stories, practiced conversations, flirted with strangers he never met, watching, waiting for one to fall. His eyes burned daily from staring at the screen too long. His fingers itched with desperation. He waited for the big fish, but after months of trying, the rewards were crumbs. $20 here, $50 there, nothing close to what Jude had promised. Meanwhile, Jude kept shining. They went to clubs, and Jude threw money like confetti. Obasi watched as people danced around him, men saluting him like a god, women clinging to his arms. The wealth was intoxicating, but none of it was his. One night on their way back from another club where Jude had bought drinks for the whole room, Obasi couldn't hold back. Bro, he began. Jude glanced sideways. What didn't happen? Obasi took a deep breath. You sure say na the same hustle I day do? Because I day follow everything way you teach. I day even do am better, but money no day enter. You day fly high. Jude was silent. Jude stared at Obasi for a moment, then asked quietly, You really want to know the truth? Obasi leaned forward, desperation in his voice. Yes, Abeg. I need to understand. I've been wasting months. Jude exhaled and looked at him firmly. The real money no day come from chatting alone. There's more, something deeper. Something darker, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Obasi was silent, looking down at his calloused hands. Then he nodded. I'm ready. Jude gave a solemn nod. Good, prepare yourself. Tonight we day go somewhere. That night, they drove far from the city, beyond the reach of streetlights and buildings, into a lonely stretch of road where trees swayed like they carried secrets. After nearly an hour of silence, they arrived at a secluded mud compound, swallowed by tall grasses. Inside was a room thick with smoke and strangeness. Red cloths hung like warnings, and a bitter scent clung to the air. A man wearing red and white beads sat cross-legged on a mat, his gaze sharp and unreadable. This is Baba Oki, the one who showed me the real path, Jude said quietly. Obasi's heart beat harder. This wasn't what he expected. It's too late to turn back, Jude murmured. You day in already. If you run now something worse fit chase you. Obasi felt fear coil in his gut but nodded, breath shallow. Baba Oki finally spoke. "You want wealth," he said, more as a statement than a question. "Yes, sir," Obasi replied, voice barely above a whisper. "Then you must understand, everything has a cost. I do not ask for money, I ask for sacrifice." He disappeared briefly into a back room and returned with a calabash and a black satchel. He placed them before Obasi and whispered ancient words. "Take this," he said. "Inside are items you must use during the binding. You must share a night with someone. Not with love, not with light. Then you will seal that energy into the calabash." Obasi's body stiffened. "But what happens to them?" he asked, his voice shaking. "They become the offering," Baba said. "Their spirit is marked, yours is fed. You rise, they sink." Obasi turned to Jude, stunned. Jude's face was blank. "This is how we climb, bro," he said coldly. Now the part nobody day talk. The room felt like it was spinning. Obasi wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But fear pinned him to the ground, not just fear of Baba, but fear of returning to hunger, fear of dying a nobody. He looked down. "I'll do it," he said, the words dry in his mouth. A week later, Jude took him shopping in one of the fanciest plazas in Abuja. Obasi wore clothes that didn't even look like they belonged to the same world he'd come from. Designer shirts, sneakers that gleamed, sunglasses, chains that glittered in the light. Jude handed him 300,000 in crisp notes and patted his back. "Tonight is your first night. Shine, flex, and remember what you're really doing." That evening, the club was alive, flashing lights in red and purple, bodies moving like waves, perfume and sweat mixed into the air. Obasi walked in like he owned the place. He sprayed bundles of naira into the crowd, and just like that, he became the center of gravity. Girls swarmed toward him, giggling, eyes wide with desire or calculation. It was hard to tell the difference. That's when he saw her, dark-skinned, graceful, confidence in every step. She moved toward him, hips swaying with rhythm, and their eyes locked. "You look like trouble," she teased. "And you look like the kind of trouble I don't want to escape," Obasi replied. They laughed, flirted, and minutes later, a price was agreed. Everything had been pre-arranged, the hotel, the drink, the setup. Jude had done this before. Obasi felt his chest tighten as he poured her a drink, a whisper of sleeping root mixed in. She sipped, laughed, leaned against him. Soon, her voice slowed, her eyes fluttered, and she drifted. Obasi stood frozen for minutes, fighting back tears, fighting back the sickness rising in his throat. But he remembered Baba Oki's words. He followed the steps. He completed the rite. Then he placed the used bundle from the ritual into the black satchel and left the room before sunrise. In the following weeks, everything changed. The woman, her name was Blessing, began feeling strange. At first, it was just discomfort. Then came the sleeplessness, the itching, and a deep, unexplained pain. She visited clinics. Doctors scratched their heads. Test results were normal, yet her body told another story. Her voice broke in the consultation room as she wept. This must be something spiritual, something wicked. Her health continued to decline. No medicine worked. And Obasi? He started to notice changes too, not in his spirit, but in his life. People called him boss. Strangers offered him drinks. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Small money turned into large transfers. Business flowed like water. Yet in the silence of his own room, when no one was watching, he stared at the calabash and wondered what he had just become. Spiritual, the doctor finally said, baffled and shaken, unable to explain Blessing's strange symptoms. As she screamed and collapsed in the clinic chair, back in the city, Obasi's world changed. Overnight, one morning his phone buzzed with an alert from Vicky James, an American widow he had been chatting with for weeks, $500. His fingers trembled. Before he could react, another alert followed. $1,000 from another client. He froze, staring at the screen, barely breathing. Then he jumped to his feet and ran to Jude's house. "Guy, it don't happen. It's working," he shouted. Jude smiled like a man who had seen it all before. "Welcome to the other side," he said. In the next 3 months, Obasi raked in over 50 million naira. He bought a brand new Mercedes-Benz, moved into a luxury high-rise, and began throwing parties like a king. Clubs welcomed him with applause. He became a walking myth. One night, as he stepped into a club flanked by his personal bouncer, the DJ shouted, "Make way! Obasi Billions Don enter." The music erupted. Lights flickered. Girls screamed his name. A hype song blasted from the speakers. Obasi long cash. Obasi no stress. Obasi big money. Obasi soft life. On his private table sat bottles of Martell and Hennessy stacked like pyramids. Everyone wanted a moment with him, a piece of the legend. But inside, Obasi was hollow. He sat still as women fought to sit near him, smiling with his lips, but not with his soul. If only they knew, he thought. If only they understood the cost. His phone buzzed with a cold reminder. "You have 600 million to spend tonight. Use it or suffer." He sighed, eyes wet. Then he stood and threw money into the air like it was fire he couldn't hold. The next day, he remembered Ndali, his only living family. He packed bags of clothes, bought her a brand new phone, and stuffed a sack with 1 million in crisp notes. He drove back to the village. When she opened the door, her joy turned quickly into confusion. The moment she hugged him, she felt something cold, not his skin, but his spirit. That night, Ndali had a terrible dream. Their late mother appeared, face sorrowful. "Don't take his money," she warned. "Don't go with him. That wealth isn't clean." In the dream, she touched the bag of money, and it turned to stone. When Ndali woke up, Obasi was already handing her the cash. Her eyes filled with tears. "How did you get all this?" she asked. "I told you." "Real estate," he said, forcing a smile. She shook her head. "You're lying." She stared into his eyes. "This isn't the brother I knew. You feel empty, cold." "When?" He begged her to accept the gifts. She turned away. "You've made a deal with something dark, and I won't carry your curse." Obasi drove back to the city, heart split open. But the path behind him was already gone. He couldn't stop. Not now. He was in too deep. Months passed. Under Jude's wing, Obasi became a master at deception, scamming foreigners, selling fake properties, posing as investors, pastors, diplomats. Money flowed. His account was heavy. His compound overflowed with cars. His home was never quiet, always filled with guests, music, laughter. But Obasi was dying inside. Something was rotting at the core. The nightmares began. Every night, his sleep turned to horror. He'd see Blessing, eyes hollow, standing over his bed, whispering, "You stole my life." Sometimes worms crawled from her eyes. Sometimes she bled from the mouth. Sometimes she laughed and vanished into smoke. He woke up drenched in sweat, throat raw from screaming, but even then, he couldn't stop. The pact required more. The darkness needed fresh offerings. If he didn't renew it, everything would be lost. One day, the fortune simply stopped. Clients vanished. Alerts disappeared. Obasi tried everything Jude had taught him, every tactic, every lie. Nothing worked. It was like the world had shut its gates. In a panic, he called Jude. "Guy, Abig, help me. Nothing day work again, my money down dry." Jude sighed on the line. "You think this thing ends after one ritual? You never knew?" Obasi felt his throat tighten. "What do you mean?" "It must be renewed every 3 months. That's the rule." "How?" Obasi whispered. But he already knew the answer. You know how, Jude said quietly. Keep feeding it. Or it will feed on you. Obasi dropped the phone. His hands shook. No one had told him this. He thought it was one time, one night. But this was forever. He sat on the floor of his mansion, surrounded by gold and glass, feeling like a beggar. He had two options now: return to poverty or continue down this path of darkness. The bills piled. His name carried weight. People respected him. He had tasted power, tasted the sweetness of being seen. So he chose the shadows. He returned to the clubs, not to party, but to search. Every new offering extended the covenant. More wealth, more shadows, more rot. But now Obasi no longer cared. His conscience had died. His heart was stone. He wasn't human anymore, just a vessel full of riches and regret.